The studio lights burned bright. Inside the gleaming CNN Global studio in Atlanta, cameras rolled as journalists whispered into their mics. LED panels lit up with flags of the US and Burkina Faso. This wasn't just an interview. It was a global moment. Coming to us live from Ouagadougou, the host said, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, President of Burkina Faso. The screen split. On the left, the host, American-born, confident, smiling. On the right, Traoré, seated calmly in a modest room, Burkina Faso's flag behind him. His eyes didn't move. He looked directly into the lens, unshaken. They began with diplomacy, trade, security, African sovereignty. But tension brewed, unspoken, heavy. Suddenly, the host turned sharp. Captain Traoré, how do you respond to allegations that your government is being influenced by authoritarian regimes? Russia, China? Traoré's jaw stiffened. He paused. Then he leaned forward. With a calm, surgical tone, he said, "The only real threat to democracy is pretending that men like Donald Trump stand for freedom. He belongs in prison." Gasps shot across the studio. The host froze, a beat of silence. Then, chaos. MAGA supporters in the audience screamed. The anchor's eyes widened. The world had just changed. Live. Security scrambled. Several MAGA supporters, older men in red hats, and a woman draped in the US flag, stood up shouting, "Traitor! Fake leader! Trump is the chosen one!" The camera crew zoomed in, catching every wrinkle of rage. One man waved a Bible in the air, but Traoré didn't flinch. On the screen, he sat still. His voice came through, steady and firm. "I do not speak as a politician. I speak as a son of a land that's been exploited for generations. When leaders lie, incite hatred, and walk free, while our people suffer, it is our duty to speak." The host tried to recover. "Captain, this is live. You've just accused a US president." "Yes," Traoré said plainly, "and I can prove it." That's when the studio truly cracked. Chatter among the anchors exploded. One producer was visibly crying. Outside the studio, hashtags began to trend. Traoré speaks. Trump on trial. Africa rises. One anchor whispered, off mic but caught by the feed, "We're witnessing history." Back in Burkina Faso, a young boy named Malik watched from a crowded cafe. He clutched his chest, eyes wide. "Mama," he whispered. "He's not afraid." And the tears began to flow. Not from rage, from truth. The host leaned forward now, beads of sweat visible. "Captain Traoré," she said, struggling to stay composed, "you said you can prove it. Are you referring to official charges? Or is this just political rhetoric?" Traoré didn't blink. Instead, he reached off screen and pulled out a worn brown envelope. He held it up. On the front, a seal, the US Department of State. "This was never supposed to reach the public," he said quietly. "But sometimes history demands we disobey silence." The studio gasped. Inside is a letter sent by a former Trump campaign official to a private arms contractor in West Africa. It details offers of illegal weapons transfers, resource exploitation agreements, and pressure to silence regional leaders. The host's voice trembled. "Are you saying Trump tried to arm rebel groups?" Traoré opened the envelope and unfolded the letter, slowly, deliberately. The camera zoomed in. Even blurred for broadcast, the header was unmistakable. "Confidential, eyes only." The studio fell completely silent. But in homes across the world, hearts raced. One African grandmother cried in her kitchen. An American student stared in disbelief. Even Trump's allies were silent, because truth had a face now, and his name was Ibrahim Traoré. The host's face turned pale. She glanced at her producer off camera. A voice crackled in her earpiece. "Cut the feed. Cut the feed." But it was too late. The envelope in Traoré's hand had already started a fire. He didn't yell. He didn't even raise his voice. "This is not about politics," he said slowly. "It's about power, and who suffers when powerful men lie." A MAGA supporter stood up again, screaming, "Lies! Where's the proof? You're just another puppet." Traoré responded without blinking. "My people have seen their resources stolen, their leaders bribed, and their children bombed in silence. We were quiet for decades, but silence is no longer strength." A hush fell over the crowd. In the control room, producers panicked. Advertisers were pulling out. Yet no one dared press the button. Too many people were watching. Back in Burkina Faso, schools had paused lessons. Teachers turned on radios. Children sat, mouths open, staring. Somewhere in rural Texas, an ex-soldier named David sat alone, shaking. His son had died in Burkina Faso, in a mission he never understood. And now, someone was finally speaking. David whispered, "Why wasn't this man ever on TV before?" Traoré took a breath. Then came the story that would haunt millions. 2 years ago, he began, I stood beside a village boy named Isaka. He was 12. He had stepped on a mine planted by a militia armed with weapons from abroad. His leg was gone. His blood ran into the sand. The studio went silent. I held his hand as he cried for his mother. He said, "Tell her I didn't run. Tell her I stayed brave." Isaka died before the helicopter arrived. By now, the MAGA supporters weren't yelling. They sat down. Even the most loyal among them had gone quiet. "The weapons we found in that camp," Traoré said, "were stamped with American manufacturer codes. And through intermediaries, some were traced to private contractors. Contractors tied to people inside Trump's campaign." The anchor couldn't speak. Her voice cracked. This is all verified?" Burkina Faso kept quiet. We didn't want war with a superpower, but the world deserves to know. At home, Isaka's mother watched on a small TV, clutching her scarf, tears streaming down her face. In that moment, this wasn't politics, it was humanity, and millions began to cry. What the audience didn't know was that the translator had paused on purpose. As Traoré spoke in French, his words were instantly translated into English. But for a single moment, when he said Isaka's name, the translator stopped. She choked. She couldn't breathe, because she knew that name. Isaka had once been her neighbor's son. She had watched him grow up, barefoot and smiling, always singing in the dusty alleys of Ouagadougou. Now she was translating the story of his death. Live. She turned her mic off and whispered, "I'm sorry." But the damage was done. Millions had heard it raw in Traoré's voice. Even those who didn't understand French felt it, like a blow to the chest. Back on screen, Traoré looked directly into the camera. "Some of you will say, I hate America. That's not true. I love the people. I know their pain. But when justice is denied to the small, we all lose." Suddenly the host looked away, wiping her eye. A MAGA supporter whispered, "He's lying." But another one, an older man, stood up quietly and whispered, "No, he's telling the truth." Somewhere deep inside the world, something had begun to shift. The world watched as Traoré's voice cut through the studio's charged air. But there is more, much more. He held up a digital tablet. On it, files, documents, videos, photos, painted a grim picture. Secret meetings, unmarked flights, shadowy contracts between private companies and warlords. One video showed barrels marked with a U.S. emblem, unloaded in a remote African port. The host swallowed hard. "Captain Traoré, these are serious accusations. How did you get these?" Traoré's calm gaze pierced the screen. "Our intelligence agents risk their lives every day. They gather what the world refuses to see. I won't name names now, too dangerous. But I promise, Justice will come. MAGA supporters began chanting, "Fake news, fake news." Yet behind the anger, doubt flickered. This wasn't just politics. It was raw truth. In Ouagadougou, a young woman named Amina hugged her baby tighter, tears streaming. "He speaks for us all," she whispered. A video played in the background. A woman, exhausted and desperate, stood before a crowd. "My son was killed in a firefight. He was a farmer, not a soldier. They armed the militants who came for us." The woman's voice cracked. "I want the world to know the pain of Burkina Faso. Not just the numbers, but the faces, the mothers, the children." Traoré looked solemn. She is one of millions who suffer, while the powerful profit. The studio was quiet except for the woman's sobs. A MAGA supporter muttered, "This is sad, but unrelated." Traoré's eyes burned. It's all connected. The bloodshed in Africa, the silence in America. It's time to break that silence. Across the US, viewers wiped tears. Even skeptics felt the weight of her pain. A middle school teacher named Karen paused her TV. She whispered, "How many more must suffer before we act?" The lead anchor, usually steady, now sat speechless. Her hand trembled as she adjusted her glasses. She glanced at her co-anchor, who nodded almost imperceptibly. The live feed showed Traoré, unwavering. "I stand for justice, for the truth, for every family who's lost a child to greed and lies." Suddenly the anchor spoke softly. "Captain Traoré, your courage is undeniable. Thank you for sharing these stories." A MAGA supporter in the studio shouted, "Bias, this is propaganda." But others sat in silence, their faces unreadable. Outside, the world's reaction exploded online. News channels scrambled to cover the interview. Hashtags like "Justice for Africa" and "Rash Truth" from Traoré trended worldwide. And in a small town in Missouri, a young man named Jake stared at the screen, tears rolling down. He whispered, "I didn't know. I didn't know it was this bad." The studio's energy shifted. Traoré's calm voice carried a weight no one could ignore. "Speaking truth comes with a cost. I have lost friends, advisors, and even family for standing up." He paused. "My cousin Musa was killed in a bombed village where arms from foreign powers flowed unchecked. His only crime was trying to protect his people." Musa's picture flashed briefly on screen. A young man smiling despite hardship. A silence gripped the studio. The host's eyes filled with tears. "Captain, your bravery honors him." Traoré nodded slowly. "But it's not enough to mourn. We must act. The same men who shield criminals abroad must be held accountable." MAGA supporters grew restless, but many viewers at home began to understand. This was not just politics. This was a fight for justice. In small towns and big cities alike, people paused their day to listen. A nurse in Ohio whispered to her patients, "We're all connected by this." Traoré's words cut deeper. What you don't see is the chain, how these actions ripple across continents. He described a village where children missed school because of violence sparked by illegal arms. Fathers gone, mothers left alone, a future stolen. He spoke of corrupt officials, greed, and silence from global powers. For decades, Burkina Faso has suffered quietly. We chose peace over revenge. The studio was tense, but silence only feeds the fire. Traoré's eyes met the camera. "I say this not as an enemy, but as a human, begging for justice." Some MAGA supporters lowered their heads. Others whispered among themselves. Across social media, hashtags exploded. "Africa speaks. Justice for Burkina." Back home, a schoolteacher cried silently as she watched. She thought of her students, their uncertain futures, and the hope this man carried. The host finally found her voice, trembling. "Captain Traoré, your message is clear and powerful. What do you want the world to remember after tonight? Traoré closed his eyes briefly, then looked at the camera. That behind every headline, every number, there are real people, dreams lost, lives broken. He whispered almost to himself, "We are not just statistics, we are humanity." The studio fell silent. Even the loudest voices were hushed. Then, slowly, a few MAGA supporters stood and applauded. The moment was raw, real, unforgettable. Across millions of screens, viewers wiped tears. Some, for the first time, saw a new side of a man who stood for justice, courage, and hope. In that silence, a bridge was built, and the world changed just a little. The room fell eerily silent again. Traoré lifted the letter once more, this time slowly, deliberately. This letter was sent to me by a whistleblower within the system. It contains names, dates, and proof of secret deals. He paused as the camera zoomed in. Deals that cost lives. The host swallowed hard. She dared to ask, "Captain, do you believe this will reach justice?" Traoré's eyes softened, but stayed firm. Justice is more than a word. It is a promise to those who cannot speak anymore. To Isaka, Musa, and thousands more. Suddenly, a voice in the studio whispered, "We need to listen." Outside, the world held its breath. A mother in Kenya wiped her tears, her child asleep beside her. In America, a father turned off the TV, tears streaming down. This letter was more than paper. It was hope. Live on screen, Traoré's words crossed oceans and borders. America and Africa share more than history. They share futures. The host nodded slowly. It's not about blame. It's about healing. MAGA supporters, still furious, began to lower their voices. One young man, clutching a MAGA hat, muttered, "Maybe we've been wrong." Traoré smiled faintly. "I do not hate. I want a world where children can play without fear." The studio lights dimmed for a moment, as if the world itself paused. In small towns and big cities, people from different sides of the debate found common ground. For a fleeting moment, hope shone through the chaos. The broadcast shifted focus. A video played of a young girl, barely 10, standing before a small crowd. "My name is Fatou. I want to be a doctor. I want to help my country." She looked into the camera, eyes bright and unwavering. "I believe one day there will be peace, and I believe people like Captain Traoré are fighting for that." Traoré's voice returned, soft and proud. "Children like Fatou are why I speak, because their dreams are worth protecting." The host blinked back tears. "Captain, thank you for reminding us all what truly matters." MAGA supporters sat quietly. Across millions of screens, a single truth rang clear. Beyond politics, beyond anger, was a shared hope. For peace, for justice, for a better tomorrow. The studio seemed frozen in time. Traoré's voice, calm but unshakable, cut through the silence. "I do not seek revenge. I seek justice, not only for Burkina Faso, but for every soul silenced by greed." He looked beyond the camera, beyond the room, as if seeing every family torn apart. The host, eyes glistening, asked softly, "What gives you hope?" Traoré smiled, a gentle light breaking through his stern face. "The courage of the children, the strength of mothers who cry but carry on, the spirit of a people who refuse to be forgotten." Behind him, a photo montage played. Smiling faces of children, grieving families, hopeful crowds. Suddenly, a MAGA supporter in the audience stood up, tears rolling down. Maybe we've been blinded." The world watched, stunned. Division softened for a moment. Because justice, when spoken with truth and heart, touches us all. Traoré's final words echoed around the globe. "This is not the end of a story. It is the beginning." He spoke of peace talks in Burkina Faso, new initiatives to rebuild lives, and calls for international accountability. We must learn from our past and build a future where no child dies for greed. The studio lights dimmed softly, a symbol of reflection. Across millions of homes, viewers sat silently, moved. In a quiet village in Burkina Faso, an elder whispered prayers. In America, a teenager hugged her mother tightly. The world was connected, not by politics or flags, but by shared humanity. The interview ended. The screen faded to black, but the impact was far from over. Thousands wrote letters to their leaders, millions shared the story. Viewers flooded social media with messages of hope, sorrow, and a call for justice. And in every heart, a seed of change was planted. If you felt the weight of this story, the pain, the courage, the hope, please take a moment now. Like this video, subscribe to join the movement for truth, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters. Because together, we can shine light on the darkest truths and build a future worthy of those who gave everything. Thank you for watching. Let's make history, one heart at a time.